One of the values or the reason for the power of the cortex with its 16 billion neurons is that it doesn't need to know the answer. It is truly like a think tank, just putting out ideas. It's not fixed in place, it's just idea. It doesn't even need to figure out what to do or not do. The heart can tell it that. The feeling in the body can tell it that. The knowledge that the implementation was requested or could be used to advance your safety, power, freedom, belonging, acceptance, respect is enough to not act on it. This is where the view of the self-image is invoked. Now, if it's used to believe you are the self-image, and then the self-image is criticized for having the thought in order to prevent you from acting on the thought, fear of embarrassment, for example, fear of prison, for example, then the whole thing is very painful and suffering and primitive brain. But from the cortex, the self-image can be inspected and say, well, if I did that action, these would be the results. These results are not serving peace. They might be serving the potential temporary or permanent safety, power, freedom, belonging, acceptance, respect, but they're not serving peace. And if the neocortex is able to convince the primitive mind, or if my words are able to convince the primitive mind, that peace is more important than excitement, adventure, and positive self-image, then you won't choose things that are risky to creating a negative self-image, not because you fear it, but you're just simply saying this would disrupt peace. It would disrupt peace for me. It might disrupt peace for others. And what happens when you do that is that you no longer cling to your ideas. You no longer need to defend your ideas. And you don't need to judge others. What happens today is there's so much information flowing. You get so many reports from social media or from the news media or from gossip, which say this person or this situation or even you are a certain way. And if we're seeking safety, power, freedom, belonging, acceptance, respect, we may jump to agree or disagree. But the cortex has a whole different attitude about ideas and opinions. They're easy to come up with because you've got 16 billion neurons. There's no urgency because everything's happening as it's supposed to be. Therefore, we can just play with ideas. We can say, yeah, that might be true. That might not be true. And you can see this, it's not many people who have this, but you can see this sort of mindset or behavior or response, this acceptance in Winnie the Pooh and in a character called Square, who is called a genius. And what's interesting about the story of the Square is, the children's book, is that he gets very obsessed with proving that he's a genius, or at least making the person happy who called him a genius. And so his peacefulness is disrupted. And while I was attempting to finish my point, a car passed by, so I had to stop talking. It's a disruption. Because what happens is, when the primitive mind gets a hold of some advanced idea or solution from the cortex, it doesn't want to let it go. And any disruption, like the plane overhead, I don't know if you can hear that. So any disruption is seen as a problem, and suddenly you're not where you're supposed to be anymore. So even if the original idea was a good one, you're now going to be tainting it with your oppositional energy, your resistance, your judging, your seeking control. You're going to cling to that idea. And so then the implementation of the idea, even if it was a great idea, is just going to lead to attachment. The idea is that, the point I'm trying to make here is that if you have an interruption or a block to what you wanted to achieve, if you're feeling that tension, it means that the primitive brain has taken something from the cortex, or potentially it means that the primitive brain is going to twist something from the cortex around. If the tension comes for no reason, no interruption, or no apparent block, then it's pure internal drama. But, it could just happen from seemingly random events, whether they're random or not, we don't know. Any position about insisting that they're random or not random is parking your thoughts, right? We're just letting the thoughts flow. The interruption may be sent from the universe to stop a train of thought. And that's okay. We don't need that to happen. We don't need it to be true. We also don't need it to not be true. And so we enter a state where we're at peace, even in the face of resistance. So we use the resistance, or we use the event, the interrupting event or the limiting event, as an opportunity to simply say, I am where I'm supposed to be. You can fix both of your eyes on one object, and we drop whatever the thought was. If it was important, the cortex will probably suggest it again. But we're not clinging to any ideas or solutions. If we cling to them, we're going to twist them. They'll become attachments. Let them go. This is contrary to what most speech-language pathology therapy is in terms of aphasia, where we're grasping to get that word. It's on the tip of the tongue. This is causing people suffering, in my view. I know it's a radical view, but if you look at neurology or look at spirituality, it seems pretty clear to me that therapy that is not undertaken from a place that everything's fine is going to lead to the belief that everything's not fine. And yes, this reinforces the economic model of the medical practitioner or the healer, but it doesn't, in my belief, access the cortex. The cortex, 16 billion neurons are there, ready to serve, but they can be easily interrupted by 12 million neurons, bringing us into attachment and suffering. If that happens, it's supposed to happen. It's not a problem. It's hard to believe that suffering could not be a problem, but we don't need to know why it's not a problem. I offer a solution to that just because, it's a hard one to swallow. But simply I say that the suffering, the resistance is there to notify us that we've left the cortex and that we're entered the primitive mind. And the only reason to share this information in this way is because we have a technique. If we didn't have a technique, then it would just be intellectual. But the technique is to say, I am where I'm supposed to be. So we defuel, we remove the fuel, we siphon out the gas of this truck of resistance, judging, seeking control of the primitive mind by saying it's not a problem that we have this. If we think it's a problem we have this, which is rampant in spirituality, then we're just going to create more resistance, judging, and seeking control and stay in the primitive mind. I am where I'm supposed to be.